You close the door. You walk to the car. By the time you start the engine, something has already changed inside your house. Something you can't hear from the driveway. Your neighbor knows things about your dog that you don't. They know what time the barking starts. They know how long it lasts. They know which days are worse. But here's what they don't hear. What's happening in your dog's nervous system. And it starts before you even reach for your keys. Now, that sounds like something you'd read in a textbook, but it's not. It's something researchers actually watched happen in real homes with real dogs on camera. Researchers at the University of Milan set up cameras in 23 homes. Not pet cameras, research cameras, running for hours. And what they captured in the first 7 minutes is something every dog owner needs to see. Not because it's dramatic, because it changes what you thought you knew about your dog and about yourself. Let's start with what those cameras actually showed. University of Milan, 2010, 23 dogs, 23 homes. Cameras running for hours. Not pet cameras, research cameras. No one home, no one watching, just recording. And what they recorded follows a pattern, one that almost no owner expects. Camera 14, a golden retriever. 3 minutes after the door closes, pacing, back and forth between the hallway and the living room. By minute 7, scratching at the door frame. Not gently, deliberately. By minute 12, lying flat beside the door, chin on the floor, panting, but silent. The researchers noted something unexpected. Her heart rate was higher when she went quiet than when she was barking. Silence didn't mean calm. It meant something far more complex. And she wasn't the only one. Across all 23 cameras, vocalization, barking, whining, howling, began at an average of 3 minutes and 15 seconds after departure. Destructive behavior within 7 minutes. That's less time than it takes you to drive to the nearest coffee shop. But here's what the data showed next. As the barking decreased over time, panting increased. Heart rate stayed elevated. One expression of distress wasn't fading. It was being replaced by another, a quieter one. And it didn't just happen once. Every 23 to 28 minutes, a new spike, not a decline, a cycle, renewed distress over and over throughout the day. Now, a Swedish study tested dogs without separation issues. Their cameras showed something completely different. 97% of the time, passive, not distressed, not bored, waiting, calmly, because their brains had built one simple prediction. You leave, you come back. The dogs in Milan, they hadn't built that prediction yet. But here's what makes this worse. The distress doesn't start when you close the door. It starts while you're still inside. Researchers Borchelt and Voith documented this back in the 1980s. Dogs don't just react to the door closing. They react to everything before the door closes. Think about your morning. You check your phone, you glance at the time, you walk to the closet, you pick up your shoes. Your dog is watching every single one of those movements, and they've been watching for months. Here's the thing. Dogs learn to chain your entire departure routine, backwards. The shoes predict the keys predict the door predicts silence. And each of those actions, repeated hundreds of mornings in a row, has become a signal that means one thing: I'm about to be alone. So trainers said, break the chain. Pick up your keys randomly, put on your shoes and sit back down. Make the cues meaningless. A team in Barcelona reviewed this in 2014, and they found the evidence more complicated than expected. Making departures unpredictable doesn't reduce fear for all dogs. For some, it increases it, because now the threat isn't predictable anymore. It could come at any moment. The whole morning becomes a minefield. Your dog isn't afraid of your shoes. They're afraid you won't come back. And if you've ever noticed your dog following you from room to room on a Monday morning, you weren't imagining it. They knew exactly what was coming. So if it's not the goodbye that matters, what does? Researchers found the answer, and it surprised almost every trainer in the field. For years, trainers focused on the goodbye. Don't make it emotional. Don't linger. Keep it short. But a team at the Royal Veterinary College in London asked a different question. They tracked 145 dogs from puppyhood, the Generation Pup project. 6 months of data, behavior logs, owner surveys, environmental variables. And what they found flipped the script on everything trainers had been saying. Emotional goodbyes, the long hugs, the baby voice, the "I'll be back soon, I promise," had no significant effect on whether a dog developed separation problems. None. But the owner's response when they came home to damage, that changed everything. Dogs whose owners showed visible frustration upon returning, sighing, raising their voice, pointing at the mess, were 6 times more likely to develop separation-related behaviors. 6 times. Not 20% more, not twice as likely. 6 times. Here's why that matters. Your dog destroyed the cushion at 10 a.m. You found it at 6 p.m., 8 hours apart. Your dog cannot connect your frustration to something that happened before lunch. What they can connect it to is your arrival. The door opens, you walk in, and suddenly the energy shifts. Do that enough times, and your dog builds a new prediction. Leaving equals panic. Returning equals brace for it. The whole day becomes a loop of anticipatory stress. An early punishment, scolding a puppy for accidents in those first months, increases the probability significantly. Not because the dog learned a lesson, because the dog learned to associate you with unpredictability. Now, you might think, get a second dog. Company. Distraction. A 2021 study tested exactly that. 77 dogs. And male dogs in multi-dog households actually vocalized more. Not less. More. The separation isn't about loneliness in the general sense. It's about the specific absence of a specific person. A second dog doesn't fix that. A second dog doesn't have your nervous system. So the next time someone tells you, it's just a dog, 145 dogs in a veterinary college say otherwise. Now, here's the part most people miss entirely, because the dog makes it very easy to miss. Martin Seligman, University of Pennsylvania, 1967. He ran an experiment that changed behavioral psychology forever. Dogs were exposed to mild electric shocks they couldn't escape. No matter what they did, nothing worked. The shock came anyway. Then he gave them an easy way out, a low barrier they could jump over. They didn't move. They lay down. They took it. He called it learned helplessness. The idea that when an animal learns its actions don't matter, it stops trying, even when the door is wide open. But here's what most people don't know. In 2016, Seligman himself revised the theory. Decades later, he said passivity isn't something that needs to be learned. It's the brain's default response under prolonged, inescapable stress. What must be actively, deliberately built is the belief that behavior can change outcomes. A dog that stops barking after an hour alone hasn't accepted the situation. It has stopped believing that its behavior matters. And there's biological evidence. A 2019 study measured cortisol not from blood, not from saliva, but from hair samples, months of accumulated stress data. And the dogs with the most severe anxiety, their long-term cortisol was lower. Not because they were less stressed, because their stress systems had burned itself out. A dog that seems fine might be the dog you need to worry about most. Researchers across these studies identified 3 distinct patterns when dogs are left alone. The waiter, passive, watches the door, mostly calm. 97% of the time, just waiting. These dogs have built the internal prediction. You leave, you come back. Their nervous system trusts the pattern. The cycler, spikes of renewed distress every 20 to 23 minutes. Not settling, cycling. The silence between those spikes is not calm, it's the space between waves. The silent sufferer, stopped vocalizing, cortisol still elevated, or worse, burned out entirely. Looks fine from the outside, isn't. Which pattern sounds like your dog? This isn't your fault. Understanding your dog's pattern isn't about guilt. It's about seeing what's actually happening, and knowing that seeing it is the first step toward changing it. And there's a reason this goes deeper than behavior. It goes into your nervous system, both of yours. Imagine this morning. You're rushing, late for work, stressed about the meeting at 10. Your dog watches you from the couch, ears slightly forward, tracking every step. You grab your keys, say a quick goodbye, walk out. What you don't know, your stress didn't walk out with you. It stayed in your dog's bloodstream. Linköping University, Sweden, 2019. 58 dog owner pairs. Researchers didn't measure cortisol from blood, too momentary, not from saliva, too variable. They measured it from hair, months of accumulated stress data. And what they found changed the conversation entirely. Your cortisol and your dog's cortisol are synchronized. Not sometimes, not loosely, consistently, over months. Stressed owner, stressed dog. Calm owner, calm dog. And here's the part that matters most. The direction is clear. Your cortisol predicts theirs, not the reverse. But here's what makes this more than a one-way street. When you sit beside your dog and stroke their fur, something happens in both brains simultaneously. Oxytocin, the neurochemical your brain releases when you feel bonded to someone, rises in your bloodstream and in theirs. The same molecule that floods a mother's brain when she holds her newborn for the first time. Researchers even measured heart rate variability. When a dog and their owner sit together, their heartbeats begin to synchronize. Not metaphorically, measurably. Two nervous systems calibrating to each other in real time. So the 8 hours your dog spends alone don't start from zero. They start from your stress level that morning. Every rushed goodbye, every tense morning, every anxious check of the clock, your dog absorbs it and carries it through the silence after the door closes. Your dog doesn't just miss your presence, they miss your nervous system. This isn't pet ownership. This is a biological partnership. Your nervous systems are literally connected, calibrated against each other, month by month, until your cortisol and theirs move in the same direction. And that means one thing you can do starting tomorrow: calm your nervous system before you leave. 5 minutes of quiet presence. Not training, not commands, just being there. Because your calm becomes their starting point. So if the bond is this deep, why do most solutions fail? Because they're treating the wrong 8 hours. Adaptil, the pheromone diffuser you've probably seen at the vet, marketed as a calming solution for anxious dogs. In rigorous placebo-controlled studies, no significant improvement. None. Leaving the TV on? Tested. No measurable difference compared to silence. Puzzle toys? A few minutes of engagement. The food runs out. And then the real reaction begins. For some dogs, the contrast between stimulation and sudden emptiness actually makes it worse. Here's the pattern. Most products treat the 8 hours you're gone. The actual point of intervention is the other 16. Graduated exposure. Not 5 minutes and hoping for the best, starting with seconds. Walk to the door. Come back. Touch the handle. Come back. Stand outside for 10 seconds. Come back. It doesn't feel like training. It feels like nothing. But you're not teaching obedience. You're updating your dog's prediction system. Every return is one more data point that says, they leave, they come back. One case, a dog that destroyed 3 couch cushions, scratched through a wooden door, and howled for 45 minutes every single day. The owner started graduated exposure. Not hours, seconds. Week 3, 10 minutes of calm. Week 6, 40 minutes. Week 8, the owner checked the camera and saw something they'd never seen before. Their dog sleeping on the couch. 4 hours, alone, calm. Once a dog tolerates 40 minutes, the jump to 4 to 8 hours follows quickly, because 40 minutes is enough evidence for their brain's prediction system to update. The belief that you will come back becomes stronger than the fear that you won't. And remember the co-regulation link. 5 minutes of calm presence before leaving, not training, not commands, lowers your cortisol, which lowers theirs. The 8 hours start from a different place. And for the most severe cases, there's one more piece of evidence that changes everything. For the most severe cases, the dogs that can't get past 10 minutes, no matter how many times you walk to the door and come back, there's one more tool, and it's the one most owners feel the worst about using: medication. Here's what most people picture: a sedated dog, glassy-eyed on the couch, too drowsy to care. That's not what this is. A clinical trial, 229 dogs, published in Veterinary Behavioral Medicine, tested fluoxetine combined with behavior modification against behavior modification alone. The results? 73% improvement with both, 51% with behavior alone. That's not a small difference. That's the difference between a dog that gets to 40 minutes in 6 weeks and a dog that gets there in 3. But here's what the researchers found most interesting. It wasn't about calming the dog down. It was about changing how the dog interpreted ambiguous situations. Dogs on fluoxetine were less likely to assume the worst. A door closing didn't automatically mean abandonment. A key turning in the lock didn't trigger the full cascade. The medication didn't make them drowsy, it made their brain more capable of forming new beliefs. And once those beliefs took hold, many dogs were gradually weaned off. because the prediction system had updated permanently. That's not weakness, that's neuroscience giving your dog a fair chance to learn what you've been trying to teach them all along, that the door will open again. If you're considering this path for your dog, a veterinary behaviorist can help you weigh the options. 30 years of camera footage, hundreds of dogs, thousands of hours of silence. And here's what all of it means. Some dogs wait, calmly, watching the door with a quiet certainty that you'll walk back through it. Their nervous system trusts the pattern. Some dogs cycle every 20 minutes, a spike, a whine, a trip to the door and back, not settling, cycling. The silence between those spikes is not rest. It's the space between waves. And some dogs go quiet in a way that looks fine and isn't. But none of them, not one across 30 years of research, connects their experience to anything you did wrong. They're not punishing you. They're not angry. They're not holding a grudge about the couch you scolded them for at 6 p.m. when they chewed it at 10 a.m. They're responding to the absence of a specific nervous system. Yours. The one their own nervous system has been calibrated against. Month by month, morning by morning, until your cortisol and theirs move in the same direction. And that tells you something no camera can capture, that the bond between you and your dog isn't sentiment. It isn't projection. It's biology, measurable, mutual, and deeper than most people will ever give you credit for. Your dog doesn't understand time. They don't know if you've been gone for 20 minutes or 8 hours. They don't check the clock. They don't count the minutes. But they understand your absence. They feel it in their nervous system. The same nervous system that synchronizes with yours when you sit beside them. The same one that carries your stress long after the door closes. 30 years of cameras, hundreds of dogs, and here's what all of it tells us. First, what you see isn't always what's happening. A quiet dog isn't necessarily a calm dog. Silence can mean acceptance, or it can mean something much harder to see. Second, the goodbye matters less than the return. How you walk back through that door shapes what your dog expects the next time you walk out of it. And third, this bond isn't one-directional. Your cortisol and theirs, your calm and theirs, your nervous system and theirs, moving together, month by month, morning by morning. That's not sentimentality. That's 58 dog owner pairs, measured over months, published in peer-reviewed journals. Biology doesn't care whether you believe it. So tomorrow morning, before you reach for your keys, take 5 minutes. Sit with your dog. Don't train, don't talk. Just be there. Because your calm becomes their starting point. And that starting point changes everything that happens after the door closes. If this changed how you see your dog, leave a comment telling me which pattern you recognized. The waiter, the cycler, or the silent sufferer. Subscribe if you want to understand what's really going on inside the animals you love. And share this with someone whose dog needs them to see this. They're waiting for you. They always are.